is Akkai Padmshali, and I was born a male, and my male name was Jagdish. I born to a very working class, middle class family. Then my father was working with the Ministry of Defence and Aeronautical Development Establishment, and we are three siblings, and I have my a mother who is just caring. And just a year ago, I lost my father. And about me, I'm not, I'm a person with this identity of identifying myself as a woman, female, challenging the notion of society's social construct as man, women, transgender, whatever, etc. That is a social construct. I think the social construct comes from certain amount of patriarchy and power. In that perspective, as a person, challenging the notion of society, challenging within, challenging myself, working with a larger community, the mostly working class, the non-English speaking background of the transgender, intersex, Jogappa, Marnadi, Shiv Shakti, Jogta, Aqua, Nirvan, lesbian, gay, bisexual, etc. I think it is a multiple identities which comes into one umbrella. In the journey of my personal thing about yes, I now I'm 35, 36 years old, and the journey was not so easy. I think because of my sex to the gender transformation, there was enormous amount of non-acceptance within the family, and the amount of discrimination, the amount of violence had been gone through in their personal life. If I imagine or go back to that situation, I feel quite disturbed. But you can't keep disturbing yourself. You also need to fight against the larger aspects of the gender and sexual orientations are concerned in society, where people think in such context of rigid. As I mentioned, my life was not so easy. When I tried to attempt suicide twice, I did not die. When I made my attempt second time, I questioned the rope and I fought back against that rope, saying that I am fine, and why you are judging me. I think you are not fine. ಅದನ್ನ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, ನಾನು ಸರಿ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ನೀವು ಸರಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ. So in that context of questioning back, I think that self-esteem, self-dignity, the self-respect and self-confidence brought me to be here today. I think the age between 8 to 16 years was such a crucial situation in family. When I was in straits, I was in almost 15 to 20 days in straits, where because of your identity you were sexually assaulted and abused in the public toilets. I was sleeping under the flyover, no bed shades, no food, no proper clothes to wear, no having bath, etc. But I think I've seen what exactly the 15 days of to 20 days of struggle in the street. Then I want to go back to house to compromise my identity. Compromising, I think if you ask me to compromise, I don't compromise now, because that is the stage and status where I did not have support. When I went, there was a certain amount of conditions not to grow my hair, to be short hair, and I should speak like a man and try to behave like a man in the family. I think which wasn't, maybe I can do for 1 day, 2 days, 1 week or a month. After that, it's difficult for me to take any sort of pressurized perspective. Then I wanted to quit the house. I saw my people at the age of 16 years in the Kabin Park junction. I just jumped from the bus. I went and met them. I think the way they accepted me, I found that this is my family. I belong here, and this is my community. I belong here. I think that amount of acceptance brought me here today. I think from 16 age, when I discontinued my education, when I discontinued my job, so-called mainstreaming professional job, from there I started to indulge in sex work and begging, which I did for 4 years, and I was fed up with that profession because of the amount of violence that I was going through was unimaginable. The police atrocities, the police violence, the local thugs, the local gundas violence, and the unsafer practices of sex performance without using condoms. So much of threat to your life, because you are in street. Anything may happen, as my colleague Priya mentioned, because vulnerable communities' status and situation is totally different from a luxurious building or room. In keeping that in mind, I wanted to quit the profession, and I wanted to understand my community. Why are we in streets? Why are we begging? Why are we doing sex work? From that point of view, I was working with Swasthya, an organization which was like a research organization. They gave me an opportunity to work and to study the status of transgender community very particularly. I went across the state of Karnataka to study the status of the transgender community from the context of the social economical status. I found very disappointing thing that people were begging for chilies, begging for to wear clothes, they were begging to earn money, they were begging to eat food, they were begging to atta, that ragi hittu, godi hittu, we'll say jolada hittu, like that. That was quite disturbing me, and I think the self question was, why we need to beg for this? It is a fundamental duty of the government to provide us, and we, as as we all know, how we have signed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the person who borns on the earth has every right to access our fundamental needs. So that was disturbing me a lot. Finally, what I did, I came back to Bangalore again, and we formed a community, a sort of informal group of autonomous collective. And through that forum, we wanted to reach out to the larger section of society, and we came on the streets to condemn no violence against sexual minorities. We are women and recognize us as women, So no harassment, no sulkesugalu, no police violence, nothing. And accept us what we are today. I think that amount of autumn and the amount of strength and support that came on the streets was really appreciated, I think from 1999 to 2021, enormous amount of social change has happened, and I think the community leadership, the community owning its responsibility has really brought up in such way. I think I'm just one part of the face of the movement, and I don't want to claim I'm the only one person who did all of this stuff. I think it's a collective responsibility. We as community did it together. I did not dreamt to join any party. I think for me, my community comes as priority. Our struggle comes as priority. Our movement comes as priority because we are socially excluded. We are economically excluded. We are politically excluded. We are culturally excluded, traditionally excluded. And if you talk about 1,000 sectors of society, we have been excluded. Even though Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, Quran, Bible, everything speaks inclusivity, the disappointing part is that we know how religion plays a vital role in bonding its own, strengthening the politics of religion to a common people or persons. I think from that context, why the sacred books interpretation are showing us of bifurcating communities and not having the inclusive politics. And these interpretations are mostly done by men, and these men are practicing domination of patriarchy and power. Why there is exclusion? I think this is a question itself that we need to deal from the context of religion, gender and sexuality perspective. I think if you go back to 20-25 years ago of struggle, how we were being in streets, we were fighting for our identity, fighting for our bread and butter, fighting for housing, fighting for education, fighting for health services to access from the government system. I think in that context and the current situation, I think because of the movement activism, we thank the Honorable Supreme Court for delivering utmost verdict of recognizing transgender community as equal citizens before the Constitution of India. I think Constitution has given so much of power, so much of inclusivity. If you talk any other religion, I'm not biased about the religion, but still Constitution is utmost, and the Supreme Court has made very clear. You may practice your class morality, you may practice your religious morality, that's fine for yourself, but India, under the Constitution, we all should be coming together. I think that's a uniqueness of its kind. If you compare to other Western countries or Southern Asian countries, I don't see that is there. And India is such plurality it stands for. Now the question is, should I join politics or not? You know, I think even the whole history and herstory that has come, I think me joining to the politics of it was around 11 years of discussion within the movements, within the solidarity movements of women's rights, of child rights, of religious minorities, class minorities, and other stuff. People coming together, especially with the person with disability movement. I think we discussed whether Akkai should join, and I am the voice of civil society. And as a transgender woman, I do not want to speak only about the issues of transgender. I only do not want to speak about the lesbian, gay, bisexual, intersex, etc. Yes, that could be my priority, and that would be my priority. In the meantime, Akkai will speak about communalism. Akkai will speak about the global politics. Akkai shall speak about the global inflation. Akkai shall speak about the demonetization politics. Akkai shall speak the country's issues. I think that's a notion, and the so-called stereotypical notion that women are only for women's thing. No, I disagree with the notion of that. In that context, the 2009 verdict of the Delhi High Court on Section 377, I think that has given us such amount of support from the then the ruling government of the UPA, where it made it stand very clear that the UPA government, the government of India, shall support the movement of sexual minorities. Such a huge thing that came as a boost for the movement, because we were isolated, yeah? We were rejected by all the sections. I think the fight is to accept the way we are. I think I should thank the Congress party in that concern. I think no other parties took this bold stand. Yes, I think like this what has happened. So then if you go back to Indira Gandhi's period, I think as I mentioned, the 11 years of discussion why it happened, the Hijra system, the political system, the civil society movement, and the movements of women, children, and other sections are concerned, we were having a depth discussion how Indira Gandhi period took the entire poor people together, the class and religious minorities together, and especially for the farmers, that she did such an amount of unforgettable policy making decisions and the law making decisions. I think this has really reflected us. Even today, if you go back to Bombay, if you go back to Punjab, if you go back to Delhi, if you go back to Haryana, Indira Gandhi has very, very clearly mentions, and she has supported us to live as human beings first. To live as human beings, we need housing, we need education, we need traveling, mobility. I think all stuff that is still remained in the people's heart. They call it Indira Gandhi, they don't call Indira Gandhi, they call Bapkatamma, they call Kaye, Hasta, okay? So that's how they remember Indira Gandhi. And people still have their photos in their houses in Bombay. I think she has lived in people's heart, and I can't go against it. And I'm also part of the movement. I'm also part of the community. And keeping all the recent past judgments of 2009, 2013, 2014, 2018, I think how the Congress party has stood. At the same time, in 2011, the UPA government has came with an amount of a super amount of enthusiasm. Based on our request, it has done a census. It's called the national enumeration process, and finally whatever the numbers could be, it was 4.75 lakhs in the country. I think that shows how committed the government is today. Keeping that in mind, the 2011 census, 2014 judgment, 2018 judgment, and the whole history we speak about, I think Congress is a nation of we the people, and we the country, and we the nation, and it is not the right-wing forces which claims as either person and either nation. It's only one individuality. India cannot be like that. I think keeping all this in mind, I think 2020, month of September, on 20th of September, I decided to join the Indian National Congress and being part of the Karnataka Pradesh Congress Committee, and the President D.K. Shivakumar shown his heart to join the party. I think a man with maturity, a man with amount of openness to accept the way of sexual minority agenda and issue. I think here where the so-called political game begins. And if you ask me what is this mainstream in politics, I don't say there is no mainstream in politics. Personal is political. If I don't share my story, it's difficult to bring any political change. I think my community, as one of the most oppressed and deprived community, if you talk about the Dalits, the untouchables, and like other social excluded groups, I do not want to compare. I'm politically wanting to be correct. We are below than any other minorities. because the way you look, you are facing discrimination, and that's what we are carrying as a community. I think this has to be eradicated. I remember Nelson Mandela, Barack Obama, the former US president, how these people who fought against black racism, who fought against the discrimination on the grounds of black communities. I think that way, and that I think that movement is in India, and we as responsible activists need to fight against such notion and combat or fight against discrimination on the basis, on the grounds of gender identity and sexual orientation. And we want to say that, you know, just for a non-discriminatory world.
That's really well put. Going forward, okay, what is it that you are expecting in this journey as a political activist for the community and the excluded in general? So what is it that you feel that INC thus far has done some things, and that is what has brought the community closer? Going forward, what is it that INC in particular has to do for the community and for the excluded in general?
I'm quite scared to reply to this question. Why I meant, because the political system, the political leaders and the political parties, be it Congress party, be it any other relevant parties are concerned, they have lack of education about sex, gender and sexuality. They need to understand the depth and diversity of existence of identities and the politics of sexuality and the politics of gender. It is not about man, woman. It's about understanding people's identity. It's a huge thing. I don't think it will happen in this century. I think people like us coming together can definitely make a difference in society, because we live in largest democracy. And also, if you compare the whole issue of how this democracy functioning, we are the largest democracy, and in a situation that we are getting educated by the American vice president what is democracy means to us. I think if that's the situation, I want to remember the section 377 whole game that has happened. From the 1860s to 2009, we were criminals. When the British rule came into 2009, the Delhi High Court judgment came and said we are decriminalized. 2014, again Supreme Court said we are recriminalizing, and 2018 I said no, we are no more criminals. I think the whole shift in the entire system of be it a judiciary to executive to a political system, I think somewhere the whole system has played with our community. You cannot make us criminals, decriminals, recriminals and no more criminals. And why this game? We are human beings, yeah? Human beings first and everything next. So keeping this in mind, I think me joining to the party definitely to eradicate amount of stigma and discrimination, speak about the mainstreaming politics. People have to access education. People have to access all sort of opportunity which is guaranteed by the Constitution of India, and who does this? If you ask me frankly, I think within the political party system, I don't see except 2-3 faces. One could be Shashi Tharoor, one could be D.K. Shivakumar, and one could be Sachin Gehlot, So I think Sachin Pilot, So I think these are the few people who are just, having broad perspectives about the community, but depthing. I think we as community needs to own our responsibility to work on the issue. I think that's the uniqueness of the Congress party. We have Dalit representatives. We have backward classes community representatives. We have certain caste and class of mixed and religious minorities to gather the political representation. Henceforth, I think Congress need to understand there is an utmost urge of having the voice of the voiceless community representative in the political system. I think the party shall take very soon, I hope so, the party shall take a very good decision, because without having political voice, it's so difficult to implement the Honorable Supreme Court judgments, I think I would really look forward for that decision, to not waste time to enact on immediate circumstances, to take up this issue through the parliamentarian process, through all the legislative process. I know India is a country where we strongly believe that the system shall work. System shall work with amount of commitment, with amount of responsibility, until you own your community. I think my organization is named as One Day. We are a apolitical organization. if any parties does any mistake, we critique on the policies, we critique on the governance, we critique on the accountability is concerned. So being part of that organization, I think which we closely work with the constitutional authorities means be it the National State Human Rights Commission, the police academies, the judicial academies. We train the officers. We train these people who play a vital role in bringing people's perspective towards acceptance through a policy making, from delivering a judgment, of having a behavior in common people's platforms. I think we closely work with the Karnataka Police Academy. If I want to speak for the legitimization of Karnataka, yes, we work with the Karnataka Police Academy since 7-8 years. The drastic amount of behavioral change that has happened, I think that's a gap in the country. There is no interaction between the law enforcement, stakeholders and the vulnerable community. Until we come together, I think that mainstreaming happens. We need to come together. I think that's how we've seen that the positive success in Karnataka, the police violence has reduced. I don't say totally reduced. If we talk about 100%, there's 75%. There is an amount of behavioral change, amount of acceptance, amount of handling the issues very crucially. But 25% here and there are cases, and we are still addressing this. But what is the change about this? Police officers, if they handle such cases from the sexual minority community, they contact us. Madam, whether should we book under section 377 or not? So you try your liberty to educate what is 377. So now there is no 377. If you are consenting, mutual willingness, you can still perform sex irrelevant of your sex and gender. But still, human beings performing sex with animals are being punished under section 377. This child sexual abuse, yes, people are being charged under it. If it's so-called against the order of nature, means human beings having sex with any objects, which is not so-called for procreation or consenting sex. I think we're still fighting against this in the movement perspective to have a separate law for sexual minority. I think that can be brought by the Congress or UPA government. I think that would be our future focus, to have how do we talk about the laws of neutrality from education perspective, from a very from a very medical perspective, from a very law perspective, from a socio-economic political perspective. I think that's what we are trying to address this as a community. I hope that will happen soon. Personally saying that, as an individual person, I am not for formal education. I am for informal education. Why a different informal education? Informal means you talk to people directly. You be in the field, you be in the grassroots, you understand the politics of how the society is that we are living. We say plurality, we say inclusivity. Is it still there? Why Dalits are still Dalits? Why there are upper class are still upper class? Why there is whole amount of capitalists, the middle capitalists, and also the working class? Why there is so much of bifurcation? I think until we address this issue in ground with people, it is so difficult for me to speak about the paper education. Paper education, anyone can do any degrees, any PhD or any mass com, whatever. I am a 10th standard mathematics failed, but my determination to speak English, which came to my mind, which came to my determination to take up this, Today also I practice, take 5 words in dictionary compared to Kannada and English. You practice in your daily language. So that's how you do like that. I think the other part of education, yes, I agree with that. There is an academic perspective that needs to address the importance of education, and education cannot be just a saffronized perspective, how we are excluding Tipu Sultan, I think there are very unspoken communities, unspoken issues, unspoken cultural tradition which are existing within the entire Indian society. How do you bring that to the public issue? That's my concerning thing. If we talk about the Hijra culture, no one doesn't know what is Hijra culture. We have 7 gharanas, we have 7 nayaks, and I think the entire system functions like a judiciary. Very, very, very structured, very, very strong, very, very beautiful system that we practice in the Hijra culture. I think which is accepted within the community. But when it's come to law, I think the culture speaks beyond the law. You can't go to the court. You can't go to the police station. You sit in a Jamaat, you decide for yourself. I think everything happens in the Jamaat. So how do you educate this Jamaat system into the public society? And not so easy to work with the community too. I think they also have their own resistance, barriers, their own Gharana and Akhadas perspective. And I feel so, what do you say, so surprised that few people who support the politics of right wing, they are asking me, no, I think this, yeah, I don't want to take the name, who, she was saying that, like she says in Hindi, and I'll speak in English, like I'll tell in English, we should give our blood to construct Rama temple. I think the Indian transgender community will give one drop of blood to construct Rama temple. My question was, Rama has not asked your blood. Why you want to chumma waste your blood to Rama? You got it? So I think Rama belongs to this nation. Rama belongs to this world. Rama cannot be for you. Rama cannot be for someone else. Rama can't be for, a few selected people. Rama belongs to everyone in that context. So I think these are the notions that we need to speak about, the misconceptions. I think what does the mythology talks about? The mythology says truth and trust is part of your life. Without that, you cannot escape here and there. So now the education system has to speak about the inclusivity, has to address the most marginalized, vulnerable sections, especially the transgender and the sexual minority community and the gender non-conforming children issue has to be addressed. I hope that should happen. The national education policy, if you see that there is no such situation which allows you to speak about this issue, I think I don't know what is going to happen for the future. I think we will fight against this. I think we should fight against this.
It covers the education. On the health, there is a huge problem, and there are needs on one side, and then there is usual health, routine health problems. So how is the community coping, and what is it that one can really?
I think health is a basic, fundamental need to all of us. I'm not just talking about transgender, I'm talking about the human community. There are still government hospitals in the country which are really not in such, the primary health centers are not in such an extent to speak about the good healthcare facilities. If you talk about my community, very particularly of sex workers or transgender, very particularly, the doctors are curious. The doctors doesn't have education about what is this transgender identity. Are we born intersex or not? Are we born male or not? Are we born female or not? How does this sex, psychology, sexuality and gender conflicts together? I think it's a science that needs to come. And I remember we have pledged our bodies to the Bangalore Medical College after we died, we're dead, So that has to go to the science to use our bodies to see what exactly the science means. I think it's not about your myth and misconception. It's about how do you accept that people's issues are like this. Why I mention this, we as a community still face that amount of struggle and guilt to go and access a public primary health care center. If you cough, if you are having fever, sometimes doctor hesitates to feel you, hesitates to touch you, hesitates to give a prescription to you. So like if that's a status, how do we bring up this? Why chumma going back? Just go back to the recent COVID, how it affected. In Karnataka, many people died because of COVID. Not even a single record on the on the ledger of the government. Why they did hide it? And the access to the vaccination, access to the dosages, access to the medicine that we were supposed to be getting, we couldn't. And I think yesterday we saw the video, the video spoke about why she came to the medical store and what was the police brutality spoke about. I think that is the gap that we always experience here. But in education, like in the health system, when we undergo sex reassignment surgery, which is one of the crucial surgeries, very difficult surgery, you are removing your genitalia, you are constructing your vagina, you're constructing your breast implants, you're constructing your uterus, you're constructing your genitalia again from the female to male perspective. Very sensitive topic, very sensitive issues. And which doctor is expert on this issue? People always go back to America, people always go back to London, people always go back to Thailand. Very expensive. to transform your sex to the gender or sex transformation within, very expensive, which costs more than 75 lakhs and plus, you know. And within the legitimacy of understanding the doctor's notion about the sex change process, people are just doing for 2 lakhs and 3 lakhs. To earn 2 lakhs and 3 lakhs, you beg on the street. You beg, you do sex work on the street, and you just, save that money, then you take it to the doctor. I think now in Karnataka, we are trying to bring the system, working with the government medical institutions. We work with NIMHANS, we work with Bangalore Medical College, we work with Victoria Hospital, MS Ramaiah Hospital, Bowring. Like this, many hospitals now showing much amount of interest in the last 6-7 years, post the Supreme Court 2014 judgment. I think the amount of movement building in the health system is taking place. We feel happy to all, and thank to all these, medical institutions for taking the openness in understanding and practicing this with the people. I think this only cannot happen in Karnataka. I speak for the nation. I speak for the pan, I think, so one side is sex change surgery process, then you undergo your vaginoplasty, then you go for breast implants, and where do you get your silicone from, then you go for your laser. Whether can I, laser based on the skin's, quality and quantity, what exactly is that? So I think this all depends on individual persons. For going for common general fever, cough, that is another challenging. Going, undergoing your sex change process in another world. Almost 6 months to a year, you can't sit properly. You'll be bedridden. And who takes care of you? And where does the money come from? Am I dependent of source only on sex work and begging? If I'm earned, I should be okay. I think what we plan now, so 3 years to 5 years we keep on begging and doing sex work. We save that money. In that 60% goes for surgery, 40% when you're bedridden, you just take care of that money. Because there is no economic system in place for the community. So how do we address this? How do we transform this community language into the political language? On the political language from a context of the health, the education, the importance of society. And we also need to understand, as a community, we also need to understand what is this education, what is the government that we are talking about, I think it's a very challenge that hits us to, with no question marks, yeah.